All right, everybody's back. We'll go ahead and get rid of Elizagirth here. Ah! I hit the wrong button and everybody saw my face cam for a minute. How exciting.
Oh, you should leave that one in, Treble.
My horrible Transformer shirt that I'm wearing. Okay. So you all have a few hours to yourself aboard the Deceit. You know which areas of the ship you are and are not allowed to go. So let's go down the list and everybody can take an afternoon action exploring the boat. What say?
I have forgotten everything. I know we're not supposed to go on A and B.
The main deck and the lower deck are okay.
Yeah.
The whole forecastle, F, G, and H, off limits.
Mm-hmm.
Back here in the aft of the ship, there's a workshop, storeroom, the officer's mess, and she said the most important man on the ship as well. And she said that it might behoove you to make introductions to him before you speak with the captain. Below decks, there's the sailor's mess in the kitchen in the center here, which is immediately where Sweetie Bird takes the spices off to.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly sleeping quarters for officers, and then there's the crew quarters all the way in the back of the ship at U. But people are sleeping there during the day, and you wake them at your own peril. Below decks is off limits to you. So let's start. Who is the most anxious and least likely to have an immediate answer? Adrex.
What's up?
What are you doing?
Do me last.
Do you last?
Yeah.
Birdie, what are you doing?
My answer will be dependent on what other people say.
Very good.
I think we should go visit the gentleman that is the most important on the ship.
Okay.
Okay, what is Wendy doing?
I'm gonna go learn how to cook that spice for real.
To the kitchen?
I'm going with Sweetie Bird.
Red.
I want to case the joint. I would like to look for any place that I feel would be reasonably good for us to talk amongst ourselves, both without being immediately noticed and also without being overheard.
Okay. And Raazu.
I'm okay with meeting the most important man in the world.
Okay, so
Alright.
The most interesting man in the world, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Swindy, you enter into the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
Into S here. And Sweetie Bird is furiously working. And you see that she's actually has the rafters overhead. She's agile enough that she can use them to kind of swing back and forth throughout the kitchen, moving pots and pans around, dealing with all kinds of things. And she has a cook's assistant in here. Oh, you know what? I misspoke earlier. There are more kobolds on the ship than just the lookout. One of her assistants is one of the kobolds.
She just forgot. There's kobolds.
Well, I have officers in one part of the document and then just regular crewmen in the other. But yeah, there are three just regular kobold crewmen. A female kobold in the room, and she's running her ragged, snapping orders. And when she sees you enter, she kind of just very aggressively insists on what you want. Why are you interrupting?
I thought I could help you out with the cooking and learn a few of your tricks.
She tells you that that's Sokka's job, and that until she hears otherwise from Noakes or Captain Eyes, that she doesn't have any use for a second assistant.
Alright. Do you mind if I watch anyway?
Make a persuasion check.
Alright.
She tells you, no offense, but she doesn't see how you could watch much of anything, and then shoos you out of the room.
Oh,
Ow.
There's no need for that.
Ow.
Extremely rude.
There's a
Wendy,
little
you
bit of
are
a need for that.
effectively blind down below decks. Unless you're billowing your cloak. Are you going somewhere else?
Yeah, I guess I'll go with the rest of the crew to meet.
The most important man.
Red, make me a perception check.
Sure. That'd be an 18.
An 18. The areas of the ship that you're allowed to go,
Mm-hmm.
the most likely spot to find a place where you guys can convene without being overheard would be on the actual deck, where the sound of the wind and the waves, your voice wouldn't carry over them. There doesn't seem to be a quiet corner in the places you're allowed to go. The question is, do you try to sneak anywhere else?
Yeah, let's try and sneak below deck. There's no actual guard posted. Or, I'm sorry, the hold, the lowest level.
Okay. So you'd be taking this ladder here or this ladder here?
Which one looks like... Oh, I have to... Are there... Whichever one looks like there are fewer people watching it, probably the one in the front?
Okay. There's a lot of activity on the deck all the time. Go ahead and make your hide check. This will determine you finding a good opening, but make it at disadvantage because there's really nowhere to hide down here.
There's eyes everywhere.
Yeah.
That's gonna almost certainly, yeah. That's gonna be a 12.
A 12?
I rolled a 2.
I rolled a 5. So you do find a split second where you are able to dash down below decks, where you're relatively sure you won't be seen.
Okay. Are there any sailors down here?
Down here, no. You come down, it looks like a cargo hold. You see
Okay.
lots of boxes and stacks of things. It's actually like very quiet down here. You see the door over here, and the door here as well.
Well, it doesn't do me a lot of good because I don't see getting Raazu down here without getting seen. Let's go ahead and sneak. As long as once I'm in the restricted areas, let's go ahead and explore a little bit more. Let's listen at that door, and if I don't hear anyone talking, I'll slip through.
You listen at it for a few moments, and you don't hear anybody talking on the other side, but trying to slip through, door's locked.
Yeah, let's thieves' tools.
Okay.
That's a 20. Other tab. Sorry, the non-skill proficiencies are not. I didn't lay those out as smartly as I should have. I roll a 19. 25.
25. And you hear the lock click over. Make a Constitution saving throw.
Is this against magic or a spell?
Very much, yes.
10.
A 10? And you hit the lock, click, and as soon as the door opens, you feel very heavy and lethargic, and you slip into sleep and slump to the floor in front of the door.
Yo.
Wendy, you slink with your tail between your legs back upstairs, where the other three are going to go introduce themselves to the most important man on the ship. And you guys find yourselves at one of these two doors here. Are we knocking or are we just barging in?
I'll knock.
Yeah, Adrex knocks and says, "Hello, Mr. Important Man on the ship. Mr. Most Important Man on the ship."
The door opens, and inside you see a creature that you haven't seen for a very long time. One of the Yikari, one of the yak folk. This enormous covered in brown fur, immaculately clean and styled. Many kinds of braids and weaves and swirls in his hair. Like he takes great pride in it, all across the top of his head and down his face and even down the sides of his arms. He's wearing very thick, heavy, red robes. And he's wearing a pair of bifocals.
Fancy.
And he looks down at all of you. Says, "You must be the new blood."
Oh.
Very well. Come in and line up against the far wall.
Yeah, Adrex complies.
On his head, I have to load in a tablet, which, as we all know...
We'll crash the game. Oh.
Did it not crash?
Don't ask again.
Excellent.
Don't ask again, and it will ask again inevitably. You need this blown up?
You can if you want.
Bam, there it is.
All right, and he wears a tattoo on his forehead very, very prominently. I need to make sure that I give you guys the correct one here. Because obviously Immigrant.com doesn't show me the regular file names, and I can't tell what a spell rune looks like just at a glance, because they all kind of look the same.
All I'm seeing is Google Cloud Services.
It's because I haven't loaded in the image yet.
Oh.
I can get my business on Google, though.
Yep. Fadely seafood. How appropriate where we are right now.
He has this tattooed on his head, and he keeps the style on his fur on his head is parted and shaved in that area. And you see this mark in what looks like red ink on that area of his forehead. Yeah, he tells you all to come in and line up against the back wall.
Adrex is doing so.
Okay?
Raazu does so grudgingly.
And let me get my thedeceit.txt file loaded back up here. I have more windows than usual opened today.
I bet.
Looking around this room, Raazu, looks kind of similar to what Griagro's setup is like. Lots of alchemical equipment, lots of diagrams, lots of books. It looks like he's doing similar work.
He's the scholar of... So you're some kind of scholar then?
He tells you that he has the pleasure of being Rhodos Raurmath. He tells you that he is a wizard, alchemist, and thaumaturge. And then he tells you to hold out your hand.
Raazu does so.
And he pricks your hand with a needle.
Ow!
And he scrapes the drop of blood into a glass vial.
What's all that about?
He says, "I thought there were 5 of you."
Sure, he'll be along shortly.
Comes up to Adrex and looks him up and down. It's a white Dragonborn.
Adrex inhales.
And he shakes his head and says, "I have no use for you." And he steps over to Birdie. And he kneels down so he can look Birdie in eye level. I mean, he asks Birdie to hold out his hand.
Adrex crosses his arms, offended.
Why?
I mean, you just saw him prick Raazu's hand with a needle.
Yes, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing that?
He says, "As I've explained, I am a wizard, alchemist, and thaumaturge."
It's got you there, Birdie.
That explains nothing. What are you doing with the blood?
Make a dexterity check. Beat a 19. I'm sorry, an 18.
I rolled a 17.
17. So do you beat an 18?
No,
No.
I rolled a
Well, you rolled a 17, but you have dex
No, I
modifier.
total 17.
Okay. And he goes forward to poke you with his needle, and you try to duck out of the way, but it turns out he's fainted in one direction, and he gets you on the other shoulder, and puts a drop of your blood into a glass vial. Then he stands back up and looks at Windy. This is what happened to your eyes.
I had to kill them.
You had to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Were your eyes, did they cause you offense?
They were more menacing than offensive. Don't worry though, Adrex has them.
He asks if your wings have been torn.
No.
Would you mind if I asked you to splay them out for me?
Are you gonna prick them with a needle?
He
I
says
don't mind, I just want you to be honest.
He says that's a distinct possibility.
Alright then.
And you splay out your wings, and he looks for a moment at the plumage. He says, magnificent.
Yeah.
Then he asks you to hold out your hand.
Oh. I'll do it.
And he pricks your hand with a needle, scrapes a drop of blood into one of the glass vials. Turns around one of his shelves, and he placed the glass vials very carefully into a small rack that he has prepared. And you see that there are 2 vials that are left empty. And then he turns back, and he says, that will be all. You're dismissed until I have further need of you.
Fine. I didn't want to give my blood anyway. Adrex leaves.
Adrex stomps off in a huff.
Don't include me on things. You burn me in shit.
Birdie raises his hand. What are you doing with the blood?
And he explains slower this time and in distinct syllables, because obviously you didn't hear him the first 2 times, that he is a wizard, alchemist, and thaumaturge.
Our kobold here is a thaumaturge.
I am a kobold.
Make an insight check, Birdie.
That is a 19.
It's extremely probable that this guy does not know what the words alchemist and thaumaturge mean. He knows the words, and he knows they should sound impressive, but that's it. They're
So
just
that's why
titles.
Windy just said that that Birdie here is a thaumaturge too. Because Birdie knows he's not a... Windy knows he's not a wizard. Pretty sure Red's the alchemist. Thaumaturge, that's Birdie. For sure.
Birdie puffs out his chest.
And Rhodos isn't impressed. You're a kobold. Kobold puffing out his chest is kind of like a termite puffing out his chest.
I would caution you not to take us lightly.
He tells you, I assure you that I don't. Neither will Captain Eyes.
Birdie does the the watching you hand gesture, and he points at the eye, and then turns around and leaves.
Okay. So that leaves Raazu and Windy in the room?
Yeah, I haven't quite left yet. Raazu's still trying to get a read on the guy.
Okay. He goes over and busies himself at one of the shelves. He says, or rather he asks, what is the nature of your magic marks?
I can manipulate the factors of chance.
What does Windy say?
When's it?
I can blow the wind.
He asks more probing questions about Windy. That seems to catch his interest. He asks for more details, what you're able to do with the winds.
Windy will spend some time answering questions.
Okay. So you tell him the nature that you have this, the gust cantrip.
Uh-huh.
He asks how you came by your marks.
And, I mean, Windy doesn't give a shit. Windy will tell him the answer.
Okay. You tell him that you were underground and the little
Yeah, kind of the whole story.
Yeah.
Quicksilver doll that you saw. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And he listens intently, and at the end he says that the officers aboard the ship, he's heard variations of that story. He says that the captain believes that it is the destiny of the deceit to bring great magic to the high seas and reign supreme in a land or in the open ocean, beholden
What
to
do you think?
no kingdom, no crown, and no gods. He says it sounds great to him. That's why he's aboard the ship and not back in the dirty hovel where he grew up. He tells you that the captain is a great man, and that in time you will know him as a great leader. If you follow his orders and are good to the ship, they will never steer you wrong.
Raazu nods but says nothing. She's not here to sign on with a pirate crew like that. That's
Here
not
to
her
make
scene.
friends.
Yeah, she's not here. That's not her scene. So she's not gonna commit to, especially not. She's not gonna be sent to, obey someone else's orders. Like she's the kind of person who gives the orders.
But you're not saying any of that?
No.
Okay. Where are Adrex and Birdie going?
I'm just following Adrex.
Where's Adrex going?
Adrex is perching on the main deck.
Okay.
Like, did you climb up a mast or something?
Yeah, why not?
And climbing up the mast?
Elevating himself. No,
Hey.
there's some barrels here. He'll just perch on the barrels.
Perch on a barrel. Okay.
Perch on a barrel.
Just a quick barrel perch.
Yeah. No. Everyone needs to every once in a while.
Okay.
Birdie, I guess, will just sit with his back against the barrel.
You guys notice one of the rat folk coming up onto the deck. And see, she looks around for a moment until she spies Noakes. She runs over to him, and you see they exchange words very quickly. Noakes looks over where Adrex and Birdie, where you guys are perching, and he looks extremely angry. You see him furrow his brow, and then he follows the rat woman back below deck.
Something wrong? Adrex shouts as...
And there's no response.
That doesn't look good.
Yeah. Adrex
We
follows after
better.
him.
I'm gonna go get the others.
Okay. Well, coming below deck, the others are... So you're going to go back in here and retrieve them?
Yes.
When you come in, Windy and Rhodos are discussing their tattoos, and Raazu's standing there grimacing stoically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about right.
What do you tell them when you step into the room?
Follow me. Come on, let's go. And then run out.
Raazu ignores Birdie.
Does Windy?
No, I'll come with Birdie. Birdie usually doesn't want me to follow him.
Okay.
And then
Raazu,
I'm gonna.
left alone in the room with Rhodos. He asks you whether or not you know how common it is for those of your ilk, not meaning to lump you in with the lowly goblin types, but those of goblinoid persuasion. He says that there are bugbears aboard the vessel, and one goblin as well who works on the deck at night. And there have been other crewmen who have been goblinoids over the years, but never an officer. He wasn't aware that goblinoids were able to bear these sorts of magic marks. You were the first he's heard of. And he says that, I hope you don't take offense to me expressing skepticism. He asked for a demonstration of the cantrip.
Are there any small objects that don't look to be particularly valuable, like say like a wadded up piece of paper or something of that nature?
Looking around the room, I mean, you don't have the training to know what's valuable and what's not.
Okay, Raazu slips her hand into her pocket, pulls out the charlatan's die,
Okay.
casts the cantrip,
What
and
cantrip?
then she True Strike.
Okay.
And then she tells the Yak Man to dodge and throws it at him.
To dodge?
Yeah.
Okay, roll to hit.
Nat 20.
He's dead. You've killed him.
And then for added measure, Raazu will the die to land on a 6 when it hits the ground.
And you bounce this die off of his head, and it clatters to the ground. I mean, he ducks and tries to get out of the way, but the die follows him.
There's a lot of variables in the battlefield, and being able to see and account for those variables is a rare gift indeed to a warrior of my caliber.
And he
Picks up the die.
Okay. And you see, like, trying to process this on his face, because he's not really sure that what he witnessed was magic, but he doesn't say anything about it. He simply reaffirms that the captain will be most interested to meet all of you, he's sure.
Mm.
The rest of you, following Noakes below deck, and against this math here, when you guys come down, you see some of the crewmen below decks, including one of the bugbears, have Red tied up in rope. And they explained to Noakes that he was captured slinking around in the cargo hold. He was found slumped forward asleep.
And Adrex blurts out, he must have been sleepwalking. He's been known to do that.
Noakes looks over and says it's more likely that he triggered the trap that was placed on the treasury door.
Really? That's a wild coincidence.
Is it a magic trap? Because that seems unlikely. He's very resistant to magic.
And Noakes takes the pommel of his dagger and pokes Red gruffly in the side of the head a few times. Red doesn't wake up. Looks back at Whitney and says, doesn't look resistant to me.
He's a really deep sleeper. That's why he sleepwalks.
He's very good at sleeping. How is he at swimming? Men, hoist him up to deck.
No.
And erect a plank.
No.
And the men start to work, taking him up and hauling him up the ladder.
No, there's no need for any of this. Everyone just calm down.
And you are assured repeatedly by many crew members that the punishment for thievery aboard the vessel is to walk the plank.
What thievery? There was no thievery going on.
Are you follow them back up to the main deck?
Oh, yeah.
Roll a persuasion check at disadvantage.
No, I want to blip this 2 away.
Okay.
There we go. Persuasion. That would make it a 16.
Work.
Okay. You tell him that there's no thievery going on. Noakes tells his crewmen to finish hauling Red upstairs and erect a plank. He doesn't follow. He stays below decks, and he looks at you. He looks down at you, because he's bigger than you are.
Yeah.
And he says, if it's not thievery, what would you call it?
Curious sleepwalking.
Birdie slaps both of his hands to his forehead.
He looks over at Birdie and Windy. Says, I hope for your sake that none of the rest of your number are afflicted with curious sleepwalking. And then he grabs hold of the ladder and hoists himself up to the deck.
He's a dick.
Red, you wake up as cold waters, not cold, warm, disgusting
Seawater?
washing water with a scrub brush in it is splashed against your face. And you find yourself tied up out in the middle of a plank over the open ocean, and crew members on the boat are jeering at you.
Do the Yak Man and I hear that commotion going on outside?
Oh, there's definitely some commotion up on deck.
Raazu holds up a hand and says, "Please excuse me," and heads up onto the deck.
Okay, yeah, when you head up to the deck, you see Red is tied up out on a plank with these crewmen jeering at him. These 2 bugbears have set the plank up, and about the time you're coming out of the door, you see Ned Noakes pull himself up to the deck and start walking over in that direction.
Go over to him and say, "What's going on?"
And he gives you this very disapproving look and blows past you towards Red. Red, what are you doing?
Still sleepwalking.
Have we lost Destil? Is he actually sleepwalking now?
No, I am going to, without making it obvious, try and just test the ropes and see if I think I can slip out of them at all. Like, not trying to slip out of them, just trying to get a feel for them.
They're very tight. These are sailors. Tying knots that'll hold is basically their job.
Okay.
Where's the plank on here?
I'll draw you a plank.
They've got knot tying proficiency.
Does that help?
Yes, actually.
Okay. Noakes calls out that this morning 5 potential crewmen were brought aboard to be vetted by Captain Eyes. Now, to mention of Captain Eyes, a hip hip goes up amongst all the crewmen on deck. And he says they were on the ship no longer than 2 hours before this one. And he draws a scimitar from the side of the deck, points at Red menacingly, was found snooping about where he shouldn't have been. Asleep, having triggered Captain Eye's own trap. Then there's some jeering and booing to that. And then he says that the punishment for thievery is to walk the plank. And he turns to Red and says, "What say you?"
I mean, I haven't stolen anything. I was simply investigating.
You didn't steal anything because you weren't given the chance. And the men on the deck give out another cheer.
How far out on the water are we?
You're out of eyeshot of land at this point.
So you're thinking I'm going to steal something and then swim back to You have us at a disadvantage. I would like to negotiate with your captain with a bit more understanding of our individual positions. So I wanted to get a little more information. I had no intention of taking anything off the ship. Again, am I just gonna swim the whole way to shore with it? Better hope it's not heavy.
Noakes calls out and says, "Listen to the snake man's silvery tongue. Hear how he slithers." And the men cheer.
Raazu steps out in front of the plank.
Adrex shouts, "If you push him overboard, I'll throw you in after him to fetch him."
Raazu holds up a
Raazu's
hand.
running over.
Raazu steps out in front of the plank, facing the rest of the crew.
Okay.
And then she looks to the big guy. Says, "But we are not yet members of your crew. If anything, his punishment should lie with his crew, and that's me right now."
Noakes looks mildly intrigued. And he says, "Amongst your crew, what is the punishment for thievery?"
To be perfectly honest, it hasn't come up.
We mostly just steal from other people.
He says, "If there is no punishment, if it's all the same to you, he would mete out the captain's orders." And there's another cheer from the men on deck.
What would you consider a just punishment that doesn't involve killing him? Because I'm sure the captain would be displeased to know that you just snuffed out the life of somebody with some talent.
And you know
And
the
it's
captain
something that-
so well, do you? Hear this, men! The captain has a girlfriend!
I know that the captain. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let the sailors die down for a second. I know that the captain is very interested in meeting people of our powers, and he has yet to meet this man. Would you?
He calls out to the men some more various insults about Red and about his hobgoblin guardian. What are the rest of you doing while Raazu has him distracted?
Birdie whispers, "You want to sink the boat?"
Just give me 5 minutes. I'll sink this boat.
I can do it. Like if things are going bad, if things are going to go left.
What's his name? Ned? No.
Ned Noakes.
Ned
Ned
Noakes?
Noakes.
Yeah, Adrex gets up in Ned Noakes' grill.
So coming up next to Raazu.
Where did they bring Raazu's glaive?
You're not sure.
I am
bugbears
going
took them
to
below deck
continue. I'm going to continue talking, but actually, I'm going to be sending a thieves' cant message to Birdie,
Okay.
and the entirety of the message that I'm getting across is the whip, and with kind of nodding towards Raazu.
Birdie runs over and pulls on the whip and hands it to her.
I handed it off
Yeah,
to
she
the
doesn't have it.
bugbears.
Oh. Hold on.
So what's Adrex doing? You can shoulder your way through the crowd and come up to
Yeah,
Ned Noakes.
Yeah. Gets up in his grill. I'm serious.
Raazu puts an arm on Adrex's shoulder, and looks. Go ahead. Go. You can say.
Push him overboard. I'm gonna throw you in after him.
Adrex, stop.
No, this is nonsense. This is all nonsense.
But we are also on their turf. Their rules apply. I'm trying to get Red out of this to where he will be alive.
While they're all having this conversation,
Mhm.
I'm gonna go to the back of the ship and go talk to the Thaumaturge.
Okay. And the men are getting a great amount of entertainment from watching this back and forth. And Ned Noakes looks very, very not impressed with you. He's taking your insults and threats primarily as being funny. And
Raazu-
Wendy, you're heading back into...
To talk to the Thaumaturge.
Okay.
And when I open up the door, I'm gonna say, "Your men are about to push off the member of our party before you get a chance to go and examine him."
Rhodos is working at one of his tables, and he turns around and he says, "Well, that's not appropriate."
I'll hold the door open for him.
He heads out on deck, looks out the door, and he roars out with his booming voice, "Ned Noakes!" Noakes turns around to Rhodos. Says, "Bring the Snake Man to me." And you see Noakes bristle a bit at being overruled. And he gives his bugbears the order to drag Red back onto deck. Red, you're handled pretty gruffly, still in ropes. You guys following him all over?
Yep.
Raazu stays with Ned Noakes.
Okay, yeah, Ned doesn't go anywhere. Rhodos kneels down in front of the door when Red is brought over. He takes out a needle, reaches it out, pokes Red in the finger. He scrapes a drop of blood into a glass vial. Then he calls back to Noakes. "There you go. Now you can throw him over." He turns around and heads back into his room.
Where he finds Wendy holding his glass vials.
Doing what?
Holding them over her head, about to throw them onto the ground.
And
I'd like
Rhodos
to make a trade.
"Now let's not do anything rash. Because you have a great deal of blood. I can get it one way or the other."
That's true.
Raazu looks to Ned. It says to Ned Noakes, because then if you want, will you accept? Ah, shit. Never mind. My brain just vanished. I can't.
You have no
can't-
brain.
I can't words. I can't words right now. Yeah, that's what I get for visiting Griagro earlier in the session.
So, Wendy, what do you say?
And I'll say in return, I have a bunch of your blood, you could get it again. Meanwhile, you have our snake man about to throw him in the water, and then I'll have to knock all you out and take him back. That seems like a lot of fuss and bother. Personally, I wouldn't want to do that. I'm sure you don't want to have to get all your blood again. What about if we make a nice, calm trade?
He says he imagines that Calcine has told you that you've been invited to dine with the captain when he wakes up this evening.
Sure.
He nods. He says, "Fair enough." He turns back and says, "Ned Noakes!" He says, "Take him to the brig. We'll let the captain deal with him." And again, Ned bristles at being overruled, and the men kind of hem and haw at not getting to see the snake man thrown over. And
Raazu. Oh, go ahead.
Red, you were very brusquely dragged below decks to the brig, way back
Before
here,
he's-
letter Z.
Before he's taken below decks, Raazu speaks up and says, "Would 5 lashes be an appropriate punishment then? You'll allow me my whip, I will mete out that punishment."
Noakes seems to consider it, and he turns and says, "What say you men? 5 lashes for the hobgoblin speaking out of turn." And the men cheer. And he turns to you. Says, "Very well. Fetch my whip." And it's
That's
brought
not
out.
what I. That's not what I meant.
And they move to tie you over a barrel.
Razu's fighting back against that.
Birdie
Okay.
whispers to Adrex, "I can still probably sink the ship."
We're on it.
Raazu, make either strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics. And you don't have to roll super high.
6. That's a 17.
17. And you wriggle free of the men as they're trying to push you over this barrel. They begin laughing. Noakes says, "Perhaps she's not as keen to be punished as we thought." Then she slaps you on the shoulder and says, "But you'll be crew soon enough, won't you, sweetheart?" And then he moves back below decks. The men get back to their tasks.
That guy's a dick. I don't like him.
Red, you're thrown in the brig down here.
Mhm.
where they have a heavy iron door. Room number Y, which you can look out into and see pretty clearly, is a hold for perishables, foodstuffs, primarily foodstuffs, a lot of grog, a great deal of grog, and some other odds and ends, but nothing completely valuable.
Is Y one of those areas we're not allowed in?
Yes, you're not allowed anywhere on this deck.
Okay.
Does anybody want to do anything over the next couple of hours before the sun goes down?
Nope. Raazu is very fuming on the deck.
Okay. As the sun begins to go down, the Aarakocra in the crow's nest glides down to the deck and exchanges a few words with a black-scaled kobold bearing a telescope. They exchange a few words, and then he hoists the rope and he climbs his way up to the crow's nest. And she heads below deck. A little while after that, you see the men changing shifts. Crewmen disappear below decks to their quarters, and other crewmen come up to begin working. One of the people you see come up is a very mean-looking, gray-skinned dwarf. She has grayish-white hair, very scraggly. She's wearing a workman's belt with lots of different tools around her waist and around kind of like a bayonet strap across her chest. And she begins working on some just general repairs topside on the ship. And after a few moments, Calcine emerges, wearing evening clothes now. Tells you that the captain would be delighted to meet you all in his mess for breakfast.
And Red.
She says that it's unfortunate what occurred earlier. Perhaps your friend misunderstood the boundaries that had been placed. She says that the men will be bringing him up to dine with you.
All right.
Adrex looks at the sky. Breakfast?
Some people are night owls.
Red. A couple of bugbears come for you, and their intention is to untie the ropes and apply iron manacles behind your back.
That's fine.
Okay. So you're manacled in such a way, and you all are taken up to room H here, which is the captain's mess. When you guys arrive, you see Sweetie Bird and her little kobold assistant are setting places for all of you. A plate of delightful-looking ham and fried eggs. Some sort of very fragrant potato dish. A decanter of iced milk and another of wine.
This is why Sweetie Bird is actually the most important person on this ship.
Who's the most important?
It's definitely Sweetie Bird.
Is it Sweetie Bird?
Yeah.
And Sweetie Bird looks excited for you all to eat her food. And after the food is set down in the serving tray, and the assistant puts plates out for all of you, places are set for all the 5 of you, plus 1 for Calcine and 1 for the captain. Red is brought up by a couple of bugbears. Red, you are very gruffly told that they'll be waiting outside the door if you try anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit you down in a chair with your arms manacled behind your back. And after a few moments, the captain joined you. Captain Eyes, a very suave and very well-dressed drow. He steps into the room, and at his side, he's wearing Wendy's longsword.
Now it's my longsword, huh, Brick?
It always belongs to the person it got taken from.
So when we take it back, it'll be the captain's longsword.
Yeah.
I'm gonna elbow Birdie, and I'm gonna say, I told you that thing was magical.
I didn't say it wasn't.
Raazu nods to the captain and says, "Can we unshackle our man?"
And the captain looks over at your man. Says, I assume he's shackled for a very good reason. And he takes the brim of his cap, this wide-brimmed cap with a black feather, takes it off his head, bows low. And he says, my friends, I am Kelris Everhana, at your service. And he puts his hat back. Says, but the men call me Captain Eyes.
Birdie scratches his head. If you're at our service, can we have all our stuff back?
He tells you that should he choose to take you aboard as officers take 2 shares of all plunder, and that he is amenable to negotiation as to you taking those shares in terms of weaponry rather than gold. So there's much to discuss.
So you're saying we have to negotiate for our own things?
Yeah, I'm sorry, whose things? He says pleasantly.
I see how it is.
He says, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you,
eat.
Birdie.
And the serving trays are in the center of the table. And Red absolutely cannot serve himself because he's still shackled.
No, Red's not going to make any effort to eat.
Okay.
As long as he's shackled.
The captain and Calcine both pile their plates high with the available food. And he says, tonight you dine as my guests. If I take you aboard as crew, you will not eat this well again until we make for port. Please, take advantage.
Raazu doesn't start eating until he does.
Well, it would be very rude for the host to eat first, he says as he reaches over and pours some of the decanter of wine into Raazu's glass.
I'll have some of it. Sweetie Bird wouldn't poison me. We're too close.
She's too good at cooking.
She's too good at cooking.
Yeah, and the wine is very strong.
Hey, Red, open wide. Adrex flings a piece of ham into Red's mouth.
Yep, that works.
Like a discus.
Raazu very grudgingly starts to eat then.
Okay, and none of it's poisoned, and none of you die.
Because these are pirates. You can only trust them as far as you can throw them.
He says he had heard stories and rumors of a group of adventurers on the land. And he recounts some of your adventures that have reached his ears. Most specifically, your expedition south to the Wall, leading a group of Underdark prisoners. He admits that he has a soft spot for anyone lucky enough to escape that hellish place.
Birdie says, I also stole a drow lady's boot.
And he kind of looked quizzically at Birdie. Well, I do suppose the drow make fine boots.
Just a left boot.
Says, allow me to dispense of any rumors or hearsay you may have heard. My vessel is a vessel of pursuit of knowledge. There will be plunder if you come on as my crew. You will have your share of treasure, no doubt. But what we seek are the abilities to control nature itself. Most of my officers have these abilities to some extent or another. And perhaps, if all goes well, he kind of looks laughingly over to Calcine. If you all come aboard, I can rid myself of some of the ones I don't like as much. Calcine chuckles at that. The conversation then turns to you guys and your abilities. He asks, what use can he make of you on his crew? What can you all do?
Birdie makes a 5-foot dragon appear on the table.
It's just a big cube. It's like a Minecraft dragon.
And the captain reaches his arm forward and back and forth through the illusion. He nods a couple times. Says that could be very impressive. I like the illusion work. Very well done. This comes naturally to you.
I mean, I've seen a dragon before, so.
I think what he's asking is, did you can do this innately, or did you figure it out?
Yes, that's what he's asking.
Birdie just shrugs.
Raazu gives the man, basically the captain basically the same speech she gave the Yak folk man about her knowing all sorts of different variables on the battlefield.
He says, yes,
Do you bounce a die off his
I'm
head?
sure that you are an excellent fighter on the field. What I meant was, what skills do you bring my ship?
I manipulate those variables
Can you
to my
tie knots?
advantage.
Can you cook meals? Are you a healer? He asks if any of you have any medical training.
Raazu turns to look at Adrex.
Yeah. A little.
This is not the one I would have expected.
It's complicated.
He says that he is in great need of a healer aboard the vessel. He has a very accomplished surgeon, but the surgeon has no assistant. So he says, I have use of at least one of you.
It's good because you don't want to see my magic spell.
And he turns back to Birdie. And he says, and there's always use for small creatures that can slink into dark places. I suppose during our time at sea, we can put you to use swabbing decks.
I'm mostly just really good at setting things on fire.
And then he looks at Red and says, well, if you cause any fires aboard my ship, I'll be dropping 2 of you in the ocean.
Everyone seems to be very interested in throwing Red over. I don't like that.
You say that out loud?
Yes.
He says that life on a vessel such as this is very regimented. There are clear rules, and the rules must be respected. And when they are not, the punishments must be harsh and decisive. Tells you as cruel as you think these rules and punishment to be, they are nothing compared to the chaos of mutiny.
I can see why you wouldn't want a mutiny.
Then Raazu speaks and says, then seeing as how he hasn't decided, none of us has decided to join your crew, that said punishment should lie with his current crew, yes?
What is she asking?
Basically, we deal with Red's punishment.
Yeah, since we haven't joined your crew yet.
He holds up his hand and says, as a matter of course, I'm not interested in punishment. It's a nasty business that should be resorted to as a final measure. I could be persuaded to hear what your friend has to say if he were to explain what he can do for me. And then he turns to Red and says, what sort of place do I have for you and my crew?
Well, I'm able to get into the minds of others and convince them to do what I want without them realizing that that's what's happening, though not necessarily an entire crew at once.
And Calcine
Nod
chuckles.
towards Shackles.
Calcine chuckles and says, oh, Captain Eyes does that with a mere word.
I'm also usually fairly good at, you know, I'm sure you'll notice that your lock was completely undamaged. I can usually find my way in and out of places people don't want me.